Thursday morning for today's devotional exercise, Reverend Julie Lombard of the United Church of Northfield. Welcome, Reverend. Please come on up.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to take my mask off just so my glasses work while I speak to you all. When Penny first reached out to me to come and be with you all, it was for February, but that date didn't work for me. And then she invited me here for last week, and that date didn't work for you all. So I'm here now, but I was planning on being here the week of the High Holy Days of the Irish tradition. So I bring with you a poem from John O'Donoghue. He was a poet known for guiding folks through a spiritual landscape of the Irish imagination. The poem is titled Banach. It is a prayer in my mind, and when the poem is complete, I will do a brief prayer and send you on your way. Banach by John O'Donoghue. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind gray windows and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you the meadows of delight. When the canvas frays in the current of thought and the stain of the ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the oceans be yours. And may the protection of your ancestors be yours. And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. And now a prayer from me to you. Gracious God, bless these leaders and the work that they do. Give them the power they need to make a difference. Let them not forget a single soul in Vermont as they toil to bring peace and justice to all, and humble them just enough so that they can hear the weakest voice. Blessed be. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend.
You're welcome.
I'll invite senators to kindly stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any announcements started today? We will move on to resolutions. We have a resolution to take up at this time, JRS 47, relating to weekend adjournment. Please listen to the reading of the resolution.
JRS 47, joint resolution relating to weekend adjournment. Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that when the two houses adjourn on Friday, March 25, 2022, it be to meet again no later than Tuesday, March 29, 2022.
I have heard the reading of the resolution, JRS 47. The question is, shall the Senate adopt the resolution on its part? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it, and you've adopted JRS 7. We have 8 bills from the House for reference. 866, an act relating to an incremental approach to health insurance coverage. It was introduced by Representative Wood of Waterbury and it passed the House on March 17th. Please listen to the first reading of H266.
H266, an act relating to an incremental approach to health insurance coverage for hearing aids.
You've heard the first reading, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare. H399, an act relating to incarceration terms for criminal defendants for primary care of dependent children, introduced by Representative Coffey of Guilford and others. It passed the House on March 17th. Please listen to the first reading of H399.
H399, an act relating to incarceration terms for criminal defendants who are primary caretakers of dependent children.
You've heard the first reading, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Judiciary. H475, an act relating to the classification system for criminal offenses, introduced by Representative Grad of Moortown and others. It also passed the House on March 17th. Please listen to the first reading of H475.
H475, an act relating to the classification system for criminal offenses.
You've heard the first reading, and the bill is referred to the Committee. H482, an act relating to the Petroleum Cleanup Fund, introduced by Representative Marcotte of Coventry, passed the House on March 17th. Please listen to the first reading of H482.
H482, an act relating to the Petroleum Cleanup Fund.
You've heard the first reading, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy. H548, an act relating to miscellaneous cannabis establishment procedures, introduced by Representative Grad of Moortown and Burdett of West Rutland. It passed the House on March 17th. Please listen to the first reading of H548.
H548, an act relating to miscellaneous cannabis establishment procedures.
Now you've heard the first reading. The bill is referred to the Committee on Judiciary. H550, an act relating to prohibiting racially and religiously restrictive covenants and deeds, introduced by Representative Grad of Moortown and others. It also passed the House on March 17th. Please listen to the first reading of H551.
H551, an act relating to prohibiting racially and religiously restrictive covenants in deeds.
You've heard the first reading, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Judiciary. H715, an act relating to the Clean Heat Standard, introduced by the House Committee on Energy and Technology, also passing the House on March 17th. Please listen to the first reading of H715.
H715, an act relating to the Clean Heat Standard.
You've heard the first reading, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy. And finally, we have today H722, an act relating to final reapportionment of the House of Representatives, introduced by the House Committee on Government Operations, and also passing the House on March 17. Please listen to the first reading of H722.
H722, an act relating to final reapportionment of the House of Representatives.
And consistent with the rules and the creation of the Reapportionment Committee, the bill is referred to the Committee on Reapportionment. This does now bring us to the orders of the day. We have on the calendar for action S258, an act relating to amending the required agricultural practices in order to address climate resiliency. It was introduced on January 14th. It was referred to the Committee on Agriculture, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends the bill be amended, as appears on pages 1359 to 1366 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. The bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which reports that the recommendation amendment of the Committee on Agriculture be amended as set forth on page 1366 of today's calendar. Amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of S 258.
S 258, an act relating to amending the required agricultural practices in order to address climate resiliency.
The senator from Rutland, Senator Collmore, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Agriculture.
Thank you, Madam President. If I could, I'd like to speak to the special amendment.
You may.
Thank you. Senators can follow along. It's on page 1359 of the calendar. And in essence, it's a technical and conforming changes bill in agricultural practices. Section 1 in subsection A and B define good standing for the purposes of this section to mean no active enforcement, final order, and in compliance with existing grants. This definition shall not affect the existing good standing requirements for agricultural water quality in Title VI. Subsection C requires an applicant for an agency grant to be in good standing with all agency programs. Subsection D sets forth conditions necessary for the Secretary of Agriculture to waive the good standing requirement for grants in subsection C if the Secretary determines that the applicant is working in good faith to resolve issues preventing good standing and agrees in writing to comply in a described time period. It also determines that issues preventing good standing are minor and do not warrant ineligibility, or the Secretary determines that the waiver is in the interest of justice. Subsection E provides that this section's requirement shall only apply to grants provided exclusively by the Agency of Agriculture. If that agency is involved in administering the grant, the agency may report the lack of good standing for review and the awarding entity may consider it. Section 2 clarifies that agricultural waste includes waste that is imported onto a farm rather than material that originates or emanates from a farm. Section 3 in subsection B clarifies that if a waste storage facility is a threat to human health or the environment, the Secretary may require modifications to the facility. Subsection C provides if the Secretary suspects a facility may be contaminating groundwater, the Secretary would pay for the initial monitoring to determine if the facility is indeed a threat to human health or the environment, and then notify the Department of Health within 21 days if a threat is determined due to an apparent violation of the groundwater protection standards. Section 4 addresses management of non-sewage waste and clarifies that sewage does not mean stormwater runoff as defined in Title 10, and allows the Secretary to require approval to transport non-sewage waste to a farm and to report the composition and volume of the waste. Section 5 deals with nutrient management planning. It repeals this section. The grant program to develop nutrient management plans is no longer active at the Agency of Agriculture. Rather, assistance is now available from the UVM Extension Service. Section 6 has to do with capital equipment assistance programs and amends language to broaden the intent for the capital equipment assistance program from identified priorities to further the purposes of the section, including improving water quality, reducing odors, and decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. Section 7 has to do with farm agronomic practices. It gives the Agency of Agriculture additional authority to approve grants for soil-based practices that improve the health and services from soil. It provides that the Farm Agronomic Practices Assistance Program can support education, training, and instruction rather than solely financial assistance, and it eliminates an obsolete reference to providing financial assistance for nutrient management plans from that practices program. Section 8 has to do with rules. There's a technical amendment changing the old reference to accepted agricultural practices to the current terminology of required agricultural practices. And Section 9 extends the duration and authority of the task force to revitalize the Vermont dairy industry to February 1st of 2023 and authorizes additional per diem compensation and reimbursement for legislative and non-legislative members of that task force. Section 10, the effective date, the bill would go into effect on passage, and after passage, the title of the bill be amended to read an act relating to agricultural water quality enforcement and dairy farming. The committee heard from Laura Di Pietro of the Agency of Agriculture and Ryan Patch, who's also from the agency, and Michael O'Grady, our legislative counsel. The committee vote was 5-0-0, and we ask the full Senate to concur. Thank you, Madam President.
The Senator from Essex Orleans, Senator Starr, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Appropriations.
Thank you, Madam President. The Appropriations Committee did look at this bill, and it was in regards to Section 9 in the bill, which covers the cost of task force members. And there was we figured there's 4 members, and the cost would be somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000, and thought that that was very minimal. And so we passed it out on a 5-0-2 vote and would recommend that the bill be advanced as amended. Thank you.
First question is, shall the report of the Committee on Agriculture be amended as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it, and you've amended the report as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations. The next question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Agriculture as amended? Are you ready for the question? The Senator from Addison is recognized. Excuse me, Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. May I have a question, please, for the report of the bill.
The Senator from Rutland is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to just learn and understand a little better. Appreciate the committee is looking into the definition of waste, Section 2, and amending that to include waste that's reported onto a farm. And then there's a lengthy list of things that we'd rather not see going on the farm. I'm wondering if in your discussion of the items that might be listed or that are eligible to be treated this way, if you talked about food vehicles from depackaging.
I'm sorry, Madam President, I didn't hear the question.
In your discussion of items that might be imported onto a farm, did you look into the issue of food residuals being imported to the farm from the depackaging facility?
Yes, we looked at anything that could be imported onto a farm, including those items.
Okay, thank you. And in section 4, in terms of there's a management of things coming to the farm. In sub B, the secretary must obtain approval from the secretary prior to transporting non-sweet waste to the farm. Can you say something about what the approval review and approval process will be for bringing food waste to a farm?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Madam President, it would be, as far as I know, approval from the secretary prior to transporting any non-waste to the farm, or non-sewage waste. It may require a person to report to the secretary at a designated time, one or more of the following. So the secretary could visit the farm and make a determination at that point and give permission for that to happen.
I thank the Senator. I'm glad to see that the Agriculture the Ag Committee is addressing this issue, because we have in Vermont depackaging facilities which grind up packaged food. And one of the problems, it's a good way of getting food out of the packaging, other than packaging itself ends up in the slurry. And one of the things in that slurry, plastics, and if they were to be land applied, they are virtually irremovable for centuries to come. So I thank the committee for its care on this.
One small clarification, I just consulted with Secretary Bloomer. The question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Agriculture? It's not in fact amended. That's my mistake. The report was favorable. So again, the question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Agriculture? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Agriculture. The question now is, shall the bill be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of S 258. I do believe we are passing over 361 and will now move to S 72, an act relating to interstate compact on the placement of children, which was introduced on February 9th. It was referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill ought to pass. Go to page 1371 of today's calendar. The bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which has also considered the bill and recommends that the bill ought to pass. The senator from Chittenden, Senator Lyons, is recognized for the report. Please listen to the second reading of S 72, and then we will recognize
S 72, an act relating to the interstate compact on the placement of children.
The senator from Chittenden, Senator Lyons, is now recognized for the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare.
Thank you, Madam President. S72, as you have heard, is a compact. It's an update to a compact that was first put into place in 1960, so it's well overdue for updated language. The update in this bill provides additional protection and services for children when they're placed out of state or for when children are placed from out of state into our state. Existing laws did not provide enough protections the state cannot compel across state lines. After 50 years, the compact governance and structure are seriously outdated, as you can well imagine. The compact is an agreement among states and that allows for the review of where children are placed across state lines, and in cases of a child in DCF custody, oversight and domestic private adoptions. The compact applies to foster care, kinship care, parental care, conditional custody orders of abuse, neglect, and deprivation. So as we all know, a compact such as this has certain restrictions about what we can and cannot do when it comes to committee. And so if the language were to be changed, then that would render this a bill that we couldn't go back and rejoin the compact. So I will give a little bit of background and then a very brief assessment of the new portions of the compact, and then understanding that it is a long bill. I am not going to go through every section of the bill. You can thank me later, perhaps. The interstate compact placement for children regulates the placement of all child welfare involved cases and domestic adoptions, as I said, across state lines. It includes the placements of foster care, kinship care, placements with non-custodial parents, conditional custody orders, abuse, neglect, and deprivation, residential care, and adoptions, both public and private. This does not apply to out-of-state placements in hospitals, psychiatric hospitals, or educational facilities like boarding schools. So Vermont, we value placing children with family when possible, and we need the compact in order to do that. The compact allows for us to provide services to families who reside out of state and also assess their suitability for placement. The existing compact, as I said, was written around 1960, adopted by Vermont in 1971, and so the governing process is completely outdated, as are some of the oversight measures for children and the places where they might be sent when they go out of state. So this this new compact was drafted in 2004 by a national group, and it was quite fortunate for us that one of our assistant attorney generals was involved in that drafting. I am going to go quickly just to say that if we pass this law with alacrity, then Vermont will become the 14th state to join the new compact. And that has some historical significance for us, since I think we all know what was the 14th state. So we do want to be one of the first 35 states to adopt the new compact, so that we have a role and an equal seat at the table in the new compact rulemaking process. Maine has recently adopted this compact, and New Hampshire has a bill introduced to do similarly. So what are the improvements in the new language? I will go briefly through. There are 10 of them. I am going to summarize most of them, but there are two I think that are important for us to understand. One is that this compact distinguishes between what's known as an assessment and a home study. An assessment is an evaluation of a prospective placement, a place where the kid will go, by a public child placing agency, in our state, DCF. So they'll assess where the child will be placed, and to determine if the placement meets the individual needs of the child. That hasn't been happening, and that wasn't a part of the previous compact. There's also a new provision known as home study, not what you might think, but home study is an evaluation of a home environment conducted according to the requirements of the state in which the home is located. So to look at the environment where the child will be placed to ensure that it's adequate and meets the child's needs. Because there will be a single template for the home study and for the assessment, that will mean that the unevenness of those determinations in all the states that are part of the compact will be sort of attenuated or eliminated. So now we'll have a consistent evaluation throughout the compact. The compact also looks at whether or not the placement should be a provisional placement. It increases the opportunity for timely placement, so there's some time constraints that will be placed so that the child isn't held outside of placement for long periods of time. The new compact clarifies the applicability to non-custodial parents, provides for administrative review of denials. Previously, there was no way for a state to ask why a child placement was denied. The new compact requires notification to state children are placed in residential treatment programs. They don't need to have prior approval to do that. Now it's simply a notice. The new compact has some governance changes that will allow for one vote from each state and allow for rules and regulations to be made in a more efficient fashion. And finally, the new compact strengthens enforcement, but it does provide for mediation, arbitration, training, and technical assistance. So this compact came to us as a result of a letter from the Chief Justice of the Vermont Supreme Court to the Governor of Vermont, and that was in 2019, urging the adoption of the compact. I think we've been a little busy since 2019. And then the new compact is applicable within the 21st century. We know that there are things going on in our communities related to opioid crisis that might influence the need for greater placement of children, and we want to ensure that when those placements take place, they are done in a way that is appropriate for the times. So the new compact does require some transparency of rules that I think is a great improvement. And then the relationship between and among states will be enhanced. This compact, once we pass it through both bodies, will not go into effect until 35 states have passed this same language. And as a result, the old language and the new language will sit side by side in our statutes. And then once the 35 states are past this law, then 18 months after that, the compact will be effective. We heard from Patricia Casanova, who actually is the Vermont Deputy Compact Administrator for this compact nationally, and she is a member of our Department of Children and Families. And we also heard from Michelle Childs of Ledge Council and the Deputy Commissioner of Family Services Division, Erica Radke. The vote in committee was 5-0-0, and thank you, Madam President.
The senator from Bennington, Senator Sears, is recognized for the report of the committee.
Madam President, as the reporter just indicated, we really can't change a word of this. So the Appropriations Committee looked at a number of the words and approved it on a 6-0-1 vote.
The question now is, shall the bill be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of S-72. We have on the calendar for action S-91, an act relating to Parent-Child Center Network, introduced on February 24th and referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare, which reports that it's considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as appears on pages 1371 1373 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill passed. The bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which reports that the recommendation of amendment of the Committee on Health and Welfare be amended as set forth on pages 1374 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of S-91.
S-91, an act relating to Parent-Child Center Network.
The senator from Senator Hardy is recognized for the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam President. The first Parent-Child Center was created in Addison County over 40 years ago. And since then, the model of providing comprehensive family, parent, and child support and services to vulnerable young families has become a national model. As more parent-child centers were created in Vermont, their model was established in statute in the late 1990s for the purpose of providing prevention and early intervention services, such as parenting education, support, training, referral, and related services to prospective parents and families with young children, including those children who are medically, socially, and educationally at risk. Currently, there are 15 parent-child centers, forming a network of centers that covers all regions of the state. From July 2020 to June 2021, these centers served over 60,000 Vermonters throughout the state, with services including home visits, crucial during the pandemic, child care and parent education, service referrals, education and housing and employment support, and transportation. The assistance and connection to a parent-child center often has a life-changing impact on the parents, children, and families it serves. During testimony to the committee, the Parent-Child Center Network shared an incredible collection of stories from young families served by parent-child centers, which relayed successes about finding secure housing, leaving abusive relationships, improving parenting skills, finishing high school and going on to college, getting treatment for mental illness, making healthy choices, and gaining a sense of control and agency as a parent and family. Over time, the network has worked to establish consistency and quality in service delivery for families across the state. And centers strive to meet national quality standards and certification requirements. S91 would further formalize the Parent-Child Center Network and its individual members through its designation and funding criteria, program standards, and required services that all parent-child centers must provide. We can find the language of the bill on page 1371 of today's calendar. In section 1, the definitions, there's several definitions that are used throughout the bill, including a definition for concrete supports, which your Health and Welfare Committee wanted to make sure was in there so that you knew that this section of the statutes was about community services and resources to address the needs of families and not about construction guidelines or building contractors. So just to be clear, community supports are concrete supports. This section also clarifies the definition of parent-child centers as a central hub and lead provider of primary prevention services for families with young children on behalf of the state. The section also creates a process and criteria by which the Parent-Child Center Network could recommend, and the Secretary of the Agency of Human Services could designate a new parent-child center. Section 1 also adds criteria to the current list required of all parent-child centers, including ensuring that each designated parent-child center participate in and collaborate with the Parent-Child Center Network. Each parent-child center would be required to work to achieve the statutory population level quality of life outcomes related to children and families. How appropriate. Thank you. And these quality of life outcomes, which are listed in the statutes and are really interesting, I highly recommend you take a look. But the two related to families and children are that Vermont's families are safe, nurturing, stable, and supported, and that Vermont's children and young people achieve their potential. Each designated parent-child center would be required to provide 8 core services, either directly or indirectly through community partnerships. These services include home visits, early childhood services, parent education, play groups, parent support groups, concrete supports, the community service kinds, community development, and resources and referrals. And all parent-child centers would be required to undergo a peer review process every 3 years, conducted by the Parent-Child Center Network. The bill confirms that the current 15 parent-child centers in operation would become designated parent-child centers and members of the current network. The current centers would be required to meet all qualifications and undergo the peer review process. There is currently an appropriation, a base appropriation in the current base budget of $3.35 million to the network. And the network, this funding would be provided to the network to distribute to each parent-child center based on needs and services. And the Parent-Child Center would be required to work in partnership with the Agency of Human Services to develop accountability and reporting measurements that the agency would then use to evaluate the parent-child centers. The rest of the bill, including the final section in the funding section and the appropriation, are the subject of an amendment by your Appropriations Committee, so I will not discuss those now and will be removed from the bill. The bill will take effect on July 1st, 2022. Your Committee on Health and Welfare heard from the Child Development Division at the Department of Children and Families, from a number of people, directors and representatives of the Parent-Child Center Network and their lobbyists. We also heard from 2 members of our Legislative Council, including a law student coalition and our Joint Fiscal Office, of course, and the senator from Lamoille, Senator Westman, the sponsor of the bill. Madam President, the vote was 5-0-0, and we ask that the Senate concur with our decision. Thank you.
The senator from Lamoille, Senator Westman, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Appropriations.
Your Appropriations Committee has 2 amendments, or has an amendment that would first remove Section C in Section 1 and removes Section 2. Basically what this is, we remove the base funding amount and the one-time funding amount and remove the annual inflation index for the parent-child centers. This goes in the category in the tradition that unless it's an immediate expenditure, that the Appropriations Committee removes all spending and will consider appropriations for these functions in the nature of the budget, which is our practice. And this not being of immediate nature will be reviewed as we consider the overall budget. Our vote on the amendment was 601, and our vote on the overall bill was 601. We did hear from the reporter from Health and Welfare, and we heard from Ledge Council on this.
The first question is, shall the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare be amended as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've amended the report as recommended by the Committee on Appropriations. The next question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare as amended? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Health and Welfare as amended. And the final question is, shall the bill be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of S91. There has been a request to pass over S155. We will move ahead to S214, an act relating to the valuation of timeshare projects. It was introduced on January 7th and referred to the Committee on Finance, which reports that has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as appears on pages 1391 to 1394 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. The bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which reports that the recommendation of amendment of the Committee on Finance be amended as set forth on page 1394 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of S214.
S214, an act relating to valuation of timeshare projects.
You've heard the second reading. And I believe the senator from Addison, Senator Hardy, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Finance. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Shifting gears quite a bit, S214 started out as a bill related to how appraisers should value timeshare projects during this period when there is a rapid decline in interest and investment in individual timeshare units. After getting a significant amount of in-depth testimony from individual timeshare owners, appraisers, town officials, resort owners, and others, your Finance Committee determined that this was not a specific problem that we could solve at this time. So you'll see later in the bill that there is a request for a report back, the classic report back in the bill. But we did take the opportunity to determine that we could begin to address the underlying issues that towns face when trying to value a complex property like a timeshare project, which is difficult to just slap a value on in a regular appraisal, such as a timeshare project, hydro dam, a digester, or shopping mall. A lot of these projects are in our small towns, and much of the content of S214 follows the recommendations of the Tax Structure Commission and its February 2021 report, as well as subsequent work that was done by the Department of Taxes. Often when towns, especially small towns, are faced with valuing a complex or unusual property, They do not have access to an appraiser with relevant expertise to determine the value of the property. Hiring an appraiser can be costly. In addition, if an appraisal is appealed or litigated in court, the cost and complexity can be too much for especially our small towns to take on. They often choose to settle an appeal to avoid the cost of litigation or a possible loss in property value. This has implications not only for the town's property tax base, but also the statewide non-homestead property tax base, and therefore the revenues in our shared education fund. Thus, because the state and indeed all towns have, quote, skin in the game to ensure the health of the state's shared education fund, it makes sense that the state should provide towns assistance in appraising these properties and defending their valuation. In addition, likely most of us have heard from towns in our district, the cost and frequency of townwide reappraisals is on the rise, particularly due to the property value increases seen over these past 2 years during the pandemic. Thus, your finance committee took a broader look at the issue of complex property appraisals, specifically, and townwide reappraisals generally, inspired by the timeshare case study. So let's turn to the language of the bill, which can be found on page 1391 of today's calendar. In section 1, section 1 increases the cap on reimbursements to towns from the education fund. Currently, there's a cap of $100,000, and it raises this cap to $1 million, which sounds like a lot. It increases the statewide cap on education fund reimbursements to towns whose grand list values are reduced after a final appeal, court order, or settlement. In those cases, towns must reimburse education property taxes to taxpayers. So they have to reimburse taxpayers, and we, the state, reimburse them from the education fund. It retains the proration, so if there's a total of more than $1 million, then it would be prorated amongst the towns. But the tax department is confident that $1 million should be enough. And this is so that we ensure that towns don't just back down when there's an appeal and stand by reappraisals, so that it increases the value in the education fund. So it's actually a win-win. So it sounds like it's a lot of money, but it's actually helping the education fund to get more revenue from reappraisals and then standing by the towns when they stand by their reappraisals. It also creates a statewide appraisal and litigation assistance program. And this is what was specifically recommended by the Tax Structure Commission. It creates a new program at the Department of Taxes in their Property Valuation and Review Department to assist municipalities with the valuation of complex commercial, utility, or other unique properties within a municipality's jurisdiction, and to assist with any appeals arising from these valuations. It allows the Commissioner of Taxes to contract with commercial appraisers and adopt rules to administer the program, and requires the Commissioner to determine conditions for eligibility and create an application process. Any municipality receiving state assistance is considered to have followed best practices, which is what is required in order to get the reimbursement potential from the education fund, the funding that I just spoke about. So this program is created in the bill, but it wouldn't start right away. We set it up so that the tax commissioner, on or before January 15th, 2023, would have to submit a report to the money committees in both houses on the estimates of standing up a state appraisal and litigation assistance program for municipalities. They don't know exactly how much it will cost at this point, so we're asking them to come back to us next session and let us know, and then we would move forward if we so desire, or whoever is in this room so desires. And the cost estimate would include upfront and ongoing operating costs required to create, implement, and maintain the new program, including contracting with one or more commercial appraisers to provide state assistance to municipalities. Currently, when there's a complex property or unique property that's valued and it's appealed, it goes to a hearing officer in the Department of, in the Property Valuation Division of the Department of Taxes. And this would actually require that the director could just allow those to go directly to a superior court judge. The hearing officers are used to the more standard appeals, and these complex appeals often have a lot of complex information, fact-finding, and et cetera, that are beyond the scope of what a hearing officer can do. So this would allow the director of property valuation review to refer those directly to the superior court, so as not to bog down the hearing and create more appeals within the division of the department. So the next section, and that happens in 2 sections in the bill. That's section 4 and section 5. Section 6 repeals, and wait, because there's 2 sections that deal with this. It repeals a current $8.50 fee paid by the state to towns for reappraisal and preparing the grand list. And it repeals that whole thing. In statute, it currently says that this money comes from the education fund, but since 2018, it's actually come from the general fund. This is also, by repealing it, correcting a technical problem in the statutes. So that's the first section. And then section 7 increases a different per parcel fee, the equalization fee, from $1 to $2. So what essentially this is doing is taking 2 fees, an $8.50 fee plus a $1 fee, together make $9.50, and increasing it to $12. So it's a $2.50 increase. It combines those 2 fees and expands the uses to include the uses of the 2 past fees. So both reappraisal and equalization now is one thing, and it gives towns more flexibility to use those funds for either purpose. And the funds would still have to be put into a special fund at the town level so we can see where the money is going. And they can save that money also for reappraisals when they have to reappraise their property because it's gotten too low or too high. So that's the fee section. And now the most exciting part is section 8, which is the report on the timeshare valuation projects. So we can get some information next session, hear what other states are doing. We didn't have time to gather all the information about how other states deal with timeshares. This is a particular issue in certain communities across our state, and we want to make sure we have full information about this. So they would report back to us on January 15th of 2023. And then the effective date section, the cost estimate and per parcel fees and the report would all take effect on passage. The new cap up to $1 million would start next year on January 1st, 2023. So any property that this year had been contested and they had lost in court on an appeal would be able to access that $1 million. And then there's a contingent effective date for the appraisal and litigation assistance program of July 1st, 2023, assuming the legislature funds the program. If it doesn't fund the program would not take effect. So, and then upon passage, it would change from the an act about timeshares to the act formerly known as timeshares, to evaluation for purposes of the education property tax. It would change the name of the bill. So we heard from a number of witnesses. As I mentioned, we heard from a lot of people with interest in timeshares, including timeshare owners, appraisers, town officials, state officials, lots of lobbyists for certain resort development associations, lots of people with interest in timeshares. We also heard from the Commissioner of the Department of Housing and Community Development as it relates to how it impacts housing. We heard from of course, our legislative council, the Vermont Assessors and Listers Association, the Department of Valuation, the Property Valuation and Review, the Commissioner of Taxes, And the sponsor of the original bill, the senator from Lamoille, I feel like this is a little bit of deja vu. And the committee vote was 7-0-0, and we ask for your support. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. The senator from Lamoille, Senator Westman, is recognized for the favorable report of the Committee on Appropriations.
The Appropriations Committee, we did review Section 1 in the overall appraisal process, but we specifically looked at Section 6 and 7, which deals with the per parcel payment to communities for appraisal. And as outlined by the senator from Addison, combining of the two fees to come up with the $12. Although there's no direct appropriation in this, it is viewed by joint fiscal that the overall cost of that might be $850,000. We also reviewed in Section 5 the $150 per diem for the property valuation hearing officers. In appropriations, we heard from the reporter from Finance, JFO, and Ledge Council. We voted 6-0-1 to support this.
The question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Finance? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Finance. The question now is, shall the bill be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? The senator from Orange is recognized.
Madam President, I want to compliment the reporter for the details that she shared. And it's complicated and she was accurate. I want to speak to the bill because it deals with a problem that has existed since Act 60 passed. When Act 60 passed, there was a decision that had to be made. Would the local listers appraise property or would the state appraise property? And the decision was made to have local listers do it. The rationale in part was that they were familiar with the property, they had plenty of experience, and there was a system in place. Today, 25 years later, there remains a fundamental problem that this bill attempts to address. Local listers, when there's an appeal, say you're in a small rural town where 20% of the taxes you pay goes for your municipal services and 80% goes for the school. If you win the case, you've saved your 20% municipal taxes. But the school taxes are unaffected. School taxes are based on school taxes are for the statewide property tax, and you don't win anything by saving that. The state wins if you win the case. So we have a bill before us that backs up and gives the towns some help and assistance in winning the case. And if the town wins, it gets its municipal taxes in the appeal process. But the state, in a small town, also gets its school taxes, which affects all towns in the state. Big cities are about 50-50. So on a 50-50 municipality, the municipality is investing its own money to appeal its municipal taxes. And if it wins, it gets its municipal taxes. And the state gets half, about equal. So I apologize for speaking about history, but the details in this bill, very skillfully explained by the reporter, show the changes that are made today, but this underlying problem remains, and sometime in the future, we may choose a different route. But this bill is essential, as the reporter said, to plug some holes in the statewide property tax and losses that occur when local towns are outmatched by attorneys who win property tax cases. Thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall the bill be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? The senator from Caledonia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. A little more past history. More than a decade ago, included in a budget was an appropriation to PBR to retain consultant services for the appraisal of the Trans-Canada dams on the Connecticut River. Every single appraisal was appealed. And so this is an example of, in fact, a very complex appraisal. We recognize that the towns, as the senator from Orange indicated, the town's percentage, if it's a small town, is very small relative to what would go to the education fund. So since that time, the appraisals have withstood the appeals. And this was limited to the Trans-Canada properties. But every year we have included $70,000 in the budget to support ongoing updates of the appraisals as well as the litigation involved. There is a request from the tax department to make that funding available to all hydro dams, not just to the ones that are located on the Connecticut River. And they're very complicated because you have flowage rights, you actually have reservoir in Somerset, we have the dams are on the Connecticut are shared with New Hampshire, multi-towns, and so this gets into very complex appraisals, and in fact, it took a number of years to update them. So I'm simply saying that, in fact, the complexity of some of these properties has been recognized. What is being proposed here, in fact, has been has a prototype, if that's what you want to call it, with the appraisals of these particular properties. So again, in the 2023 budget, there is a recommended $70,000 for this purpose in the Department of Taxes to support this ongoing work, and would make it so it's not limited to the Connecticut River hydro dams, but those properties, those dams, regardless of location in the state. So that is a little bit of past history in terms of the legislative action to address the complexity of these properties and to protect the education, the statewide grand list, because as was just earlier stated, the majority of these tax revenues flow into the education fund, and very small towns like Newbury or Waterford or Barnet really do not have the financial capacity, nor do they have the economic gain from the costs that these appraisals and litigation present. So that's a little bit more of past history. Thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall the bill be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of S 214. I do believe we are past 10:30, and I may accept a motion from I will accept a motion from the pro tem. Senator from Wyndham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I move that the Senate stand in adjournment until 1 p.m. Wednesday, March 23rd.
Senator from Wyndham has moved as subject to any announcements. The Senate will adjourn until Wednesday, March 23rd at 1 p.m. Are there any announcements? Senator from Addison is recognized.
Senate Natural Resources and Energy will meet the fall gavel promptly as we have with history.
Senator from Chittenden is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Health and Welfare will meet very briefly in that corner right there at the fall of the gavel. Thank you.
The senator, I believe the senator from Chittenden, Senator from Chittenden is recognized.
President, Senate Economic Development will meet at the fall of the gavel.
Senator from Bennington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Education will meet at 1:30.
Senator from Essex or Leeds.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Senate Ag will meet at 11:15.
The senator from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Finance will meet at 1:30.
The senator from Wyndham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Government Operations will meet at 1:15. And Senate Reapportionment will meet at 5 o'clock in room 4. And I would like to take this opportunity to apologize to anyone who was unaware of the meeting last Thursday. Trying to find time between other committee members meetings and other meetings that would involve 7 people plus 2 staff is difficult. As soon as we had a time and location, it was announced on the floor. I would also like to apologize to those who felt the agendas, I've heard some grumblings that the agendas were very thin and not very specific as to what we would be doing. After the first 2 sessions where we heard the reports from the Legislative Apportionment Board, they were all pretty much the same. Look at the state map, start moving towns around, and keep moving towns around. So it's hard to create an agenda that said move towns around. But today's agenda is very clear. We will be accepting, looking at the House bill as it comes to us. We will then be looking at whether we should amend it with a map from the Senate and hopefully voting that out. Thank you.
Are there any additional announcements? The senator from Bennington is recognized.
Judiciary will meet at 10 minutes of 11. 10 minutes of 11. Thank you. While I'm on the floor, I want to express a concern about JRS 44, if I could.
Okay.
The concern is having a joint session without the ability to have any form of social distancing. As I read the resolution, we would be meeting in the House chamber 180 people. And that is of concern to me, and I think several others. So I just wanted to raise that. I probably won't participate because of my concern about that. But as you know, we're really closely packed into a joint session.
Senator from Windsor is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Sort of exciting today. We're going to have our first Senate Democratic Caucus in person. And we are going to do it in the Pavilion Building in room 267. For those of you who are feeling like you can't rush over or you have some challenges or time constraints, please join us by Zoom. That Zoom link will be sent around again. It will be broadcast. The links are on our legislative webpage, and I encourage anyone who wants to join us to join us. It will, anyway, exciting. Yet another milestone as we move towards normalcy. So there was a major oversight here on Friday. The keeper of the birthdays failed to recognize the fact that our own president of the Senate had a birthday on Friday, and I want her to know that she shares this date with some interesting and powerful businesswomen and some interesting women in history and some interesting moments in history, and I will be very brief. In 1766, during the American Revolution, the British Parliament repealed the Stamp Act on this day. It's hard to imagine, but as we're talking about finance, it's kind of an interesting thing to remember. And in 1959, the Hawaiian Admission Act was signed into law. Wonderful to have Hawaii part of our nation. And in 1927, Lillian Vernon, a very strong businesswoman and philanthropist, was born. 1963, Vanessa Williams, an actress and model. Very, you know, these are strong women who now run incredible organizations. In 1970, Queen Latifah. Oh, my God, Queen Latifah, the rapper and producer. and actress was born. Madam President, you share a birthday with some pretty interesting ladies, including the Queen of France, Mary Tudor, in 1495. So happy birthday, Madam President.
Are there any additional announcements? Hearing none, seeing none, the senator from Wyndham has moved the Senate adjourn until Wednesday, March 23rd at 1 p.m. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate stands adjourned until Wednesday, March 23rd